So the next sort of area of principal activity I want to talk about is efficient decision making and promoting an exit. So how do we have terms that promote better decision making and also support the idea of an exit? So these are the sections of the schedules that have an impact, and I'll go through them in a little bit of detail. So in Schedule 1, when we talk about the board and we have the option to have a number of angel investor directors, and again the numbers in brackets identify both the schedule and in this case the clause within the shareholders' deed that you could look to. But having a director on the board certainly would give us the opportunity, assuming we've put somebody there that we think does a good job in a boardroom, of promoting better decision making in the company. The fact that our director is required for the board to have a quorum means that our director, who should be promoting better decision making, cannot be left out of key decisions. And we've also ensured that there's no casting vote in the boardroom, because typically a casting vote creates a perverse incentive and it doesn't make for good decision making. So yes, if there are an even number of people in the boardroom, you could end up with a hung decision, but that's just an incentive to work the problem a little bit harder. The other thing we expect the angel investor director to do in the boardroom is to be the custodian or the champion of the exit strategy. So we'd expect the founder directors, other directors to be focusing very much on the operation of the company and the growth of the company, but we would expect angel investor director to have a particular interest in keeping the exit on the table as part of the strategic framework within which the board makes its decisions. And that's part of the value that we offer to the founders and to the other shareholders. So again, this goes back to alignment as well. Now in Schedule 2, which is simply the listing of the shares and the description of the class of shares or the category of shares that we get, an important point is that our shares vote equally in terms of any general vote by the members of the company with all the other shares. So again, we're not trying to pervert the normal decision-making process. We've also built in provision to consider if the company might eventually go to an IPO, to make sure that the due consideration has been given to that and a process for allowing our shares to become ordinary shares as part of the IPO process is properly considered and documented from the get-go, so that we won't be a barrier if that's the direction the company needs to go in. Now in Schedule 4, which talks about the transfer of shares, there's a key thing to have, which is the drag-along. Now a drag-along is a term that says if 75% of the shares eligible to vote, including an angel investor majority, vote to take an action which is effectively to sell their shares, then everybody else has to get dragged along whether they like it or not. Now this is important in making a decision. It's also important in promoting an exit. What you don't want to have is a small shareholder who, for whatever reason, doesn't like the exit arrangement and wants to hold up everybody else from pursuing the deal. That's the primary purpose and the primary value of a drag-along provision. It can ultimately, if it remains in the shareholders' deed all the way through the life cycle of the company, and during that time there's more rounds of investment and we end up getting diluted, it may well mean that we are a minority shareholder who is getting dragged. So it's not just for our benefit, it's about what's best in the best interests of the company. So again, goes back to this issue of aligning interests around success of the business. Now, Schedule 5 documents all the different angel investor consent matters, all the different things that where the company wants to do it, they need to get the consent of the majority of our investors. And I've just listed some of the key ones here. The important thing is we don't control the company. We can't force the company to do something, but what we can do is require the company to present us with the information and its preferred action and get our approval to take that action. And that's just a safety check. Again, it encourages better decision making, and it gives us the chance collectively to make sure that the company stays on track towards an exit path and not some other activity or presence. Schedule 6 is about information rights and access rights. So when it comes to decision making, as I discussed earlier, having good, timely information is essential if you want to have good decision making. So us getting reports is important for us, but it's also important that we know that the company has generated that information, because then we know the company has that information to make decisions. So it's not just about us receiving the report, it's about the whole process. So again, it's about the principle of understanding that everything that we're doing is designed to make the company better able and better positioned to be well managed and successful. We also have provided in there the practice that Melbourne Angels has had for quite some time now of requiring the company every 6 months to come together, the board and senior management team to come together with our syndicate of investors for half a day at least to discuss what's going on in the business. This is not a reporting activity. This is an activity intended to give us the chance to contribute our intellectual capital, which we say is a key part of our investment strategy, and it's a way for the company to access that. So over time, what we've determined as a matter of principle is that more frequently, such a formal activity probably doesn't give the company time to take action, and less frequently probably isn't timely enough to recognise opportunities to give them help. So at the moment, it's twice a year, every 6 months. Now, we have this new formalisation of the role of angel investor representative, a member of the angel investor syndicate who've invested in the company, who can be nominated and delegated to exercise rights on behalf of all of the angel investors as specified. So there's a new form, the angel investor representative form. It's essentially a proxy form in which we can specify at the beginning and change over time what particular decisions or what particular actions, what particular power our angel investor syndicate delegate to that representative. The purpose of that representative is twofold: to be able to exercise some of those basic rights in the idea of streamlining routine administration of the company, make it easier for the company and easier for our members to have that happen. It's also a communications channel. It gives the company a nominated representative of the shareholders who are angel investors to communicate with. The company is still obliged to communicate with all shareholders, but this is a way for us to make it easier, again, for us and for the company to cooperate and coordinate. And it's very important to understand when we're talking about this that the angel investor director cannot exercise our shareholder rights in the boardroom, because it's the boardroom, not a general meeting of the company. Shareholder rights are exercised by shareholders. They're not exercised by directors. And while there is a lot of bad behaviour about that or bad practice about that around the place, it's something that it's important that we stay focused on, and it's part of the good governance practice we introduce to the companies we invest in. So any questions about how we can use our terms to promote decision making and exit? That's all right. We'll keep rolling.